Sometimes characters like King Julian and Dory, even though they aren't villains in a classical sense, commit the craziest crimes and bring chaos and destruction with their crazy nature. King Julian was all about festivals, and he liked to move it. But did you know that he almost committed one brutal crime? And no, I'm not talking about bullying poor Mort. Today, we'll count the crimes and give adequate punishments to the goofy characters. And we'll start with everyone's favorite lemur. King Julian XIII, self-declared ruler of the lemurs of Madagascar, ran his kingdom with the confidence of an absolute monarch and the judgment of a lemur who is high on millipedes, a leader whose entire governing philosophy boils down to, I like to move it. Julian's chaos tends to circle back to him. When his big plan to fly everyone home goes wrong, the plane flies out of fuel mid-flight and starts falling out of the sky, and when the hatch bursts open, Julian and Maurice are sucked straight out of the aircraft, saved only by a parachute. Later, when his elaborate volcano sacrifice ritual to bring back water for the reserve completely fails to work, he's left publicly baffled in front of his entire kingdom. For a self-proclaimed king, he spends a remarkable amount of time looking like a complete idiot. But one thing you have to admit, he did throw wild parties, both literally and metaphorically. When Julian and his lemurs first encounter Alex, Marty, Melman, and Gloria, uncertain whether the newcomers are dangerous, Julian has Mort thrown towards Alex as a test, to see whether the lion will eat him. Using the smallest, most defenseless member of your own kingdom as a lion taste test is still a crime, even if you are a king. Deliberately placing another individual in a situation with a foreseeable risk of death or serious injury without their consent is reckless endangerment. Under Malagasy law, that can result in 2 years in prison. King Julian running count, 2 years in prison. Shortly after, once Julian realizes Alex's mere presence scares off the fossa, he decides to keep the zoo animals around specifically to use as a living deterrent against future attacks, ignoring Maurice's explicit warnings that Alex, a lion, may eventually pose a real danger to everyone nearby. Knowingly exposing his own subjects and unwitting guests to an ongoing risk for his own convenience adds another count of reckless endangerment, and another 2 years in prison. King Julian running count, 2 + 2 years in prison. While off in Africa, the reserve's watering hole dried up, so King Julian did what he does best. He organized a ceremonial sacrifice at the volcano, choosing Melman to be thrown in as an offering to the water gods to bring back the water. The only reason Melman escaped is because he had a last-minute change of heart about wanting to live. Trying to throw another individual into an active volcano is attempted murder. But in this case, Melman actually volunteered because of his suicidal tendencies, so the actual crime is assisting suicide. In Madagascar, the crime for aiding a suicide can result to up to 5 years in prison. Assuming, of course, that he's put on trial in Madagascar. And that was King Julian, the lemur who would do anything for a festival and a bit of drums and dancing, even throw a depressed giraffe into a volcano. King Julian final count, 9 years in prison. Now, let's proceed with one silly snowman. Olaf is a snowman built entirely out of joy and snow. He has no sense of danger, no sense of self-preservation, and apparently no sense that he's made of a substance that turns into a puddle the moment someone lights a fire nearby.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
During the confrontation at Elsa's ice palace, Marshmallow, the giant snow guardian that Elsa creates, swats Olaf away, and the impact knocks his head clean off his body. Olaf keeps right on talking and wandering around while decapitated, completely unbothered, holding a conversation with his own detached head before eventually finding his way back to his body. Later, when Anna is freezing to death after being struck in the heart by Elsa's magic, Olaf builds and tends a fire to keep her warm, getting close enough to the flames that he starts to melt. He stays anyway, famously saying,
"Some people are worth melting for,"
while being fully aware of what the heat is doing to him. Frozen is set in the fictional kingdom of Arendelle, which is inspired by 19th century Norway. Anna, Kristoff, and Olaf arrive at Elsa's freshly self-built ice palace and walk straight in without an invitation. Entering someone's home uninvited is unlawful entry onto private property, a real category of offense under 19th century Norwegian law, typically resulting in a fine or a few months of imprisonment, assuming Elsa pressed charges. Olaf running count, 6 months imprisonment. In Frozen 2, Olaf joins Anna, Elsa, Kristoff, and Sven as they cross into the Enchanted Forest, territory that had been completely sealed off by an unnatural, permanent mist for decades, ever since a violent clash between Arendel's army and the native Northuldra people. It's forbidden, cursed ground tied to an old, unresolved conflict between two people. Crossing into a territory sealed off due to unresolved hostilities would be treated as a trespass, given the historically sensitive nature of the land. That adds another 6 months in prison, and that prison better be without heat and full of ice and snow, or it's a death sentence for poor Olaf. Olaf final count, 1 year in prison. Next, we have a golden retriever that could talk, in several languages. Doug is a golden retriever in the purest sense of the word, incapable of holding a grudge, a secret, or a coherent train of thought for longer than 5 seconds. He genuinely believes snitching on his own escape plan to the enemy is just good manners.
I have just met you, and I love you.
Is golden retriever in a nutshell. But Doug is the pack's punching bag. Alpha humiliates him, other dogs bully him, and he's treated as the dumbest member of the group. He gets his tail stepped on, gets thrown off the airship, and even wears the cone of shame. For a good dog, life really doesn't go his way. Up is set in Paradise Falls in Venezuela, so we're using Venezuelan law to count up Doug's crimes. Doug is part of Charles Muntz's dog pack, tasked with hunting down Kevin, a rare and previously undiscovered bird species. That means tracking Kevin through the jungle and reporting the bird's location back to the pack. Under Venezuela's Ley Penal del Ambiente, the environmental penal law, tracking and harassing a wild, unclassified animal on behalf of an illegal capture operation counts as illegal hunting, and can lead up to 5 years in prison. Doug running count, 5 years in prison. And when he finds Kevin, Doug doesn't just report the bird, he also tries cornering and detaining her so the rest of the pack can move in. That's aiding and abetting the poaching operation, which under Venezuelan environmental law adds another 18 months. Since Doug wasn't just present, he was also helping. Doug running count, 5 years plus 18 months. Doug relentlessly and cheerfully asks to take Kevin as my prisoner. Not the most subtle legal defense, considering he says the quiet part out loud every single time. Regardless of how politely he asks, trying to seize and detain a wild animal against her will, multiple times, on separate occasions, is unlawful imprisonment and attempted kidnapping. Venezuelan laws treats kidnapping attempts as an aggravating factor, so this alone carries up to 20 years in prison. Doug final count, 25 years plus 18 months in prison. Next, we're gonna count the crimes of the fish who can't remember her own name for longer than 10 seconds.
I'm so sorry. See, I suffer from short-term memory loss. It runs in my family. Well, I mean, at least I think it does.
Dory's memory doesn't just make her forgetful, it also makes her a magnet for pain. She cheerfully touches a jellyfish because she forgot it was dangerous, 3 seconds after being warned. She gets mocked, ignored, and ditched mid-sentence by strangers who assume she's not worth the effort. She was separated from her parents as a child when she was swept away by a strong undertow current. She kept forgetting that she was searching for them and drifted out into the open ocean. But what about Dory's crimes? Surely she isn't a criminal type, but certainly is tough for a small fish, and she isn't afraid to intimidate others, and her goofing often results in chaotic events. Finding Nemo takes place around Sydney Harbor, so let's charge this fish for her crimes, using New South Wales law. Dory and Martin went straight through a jellyfish forest to save time. Leading another fish into a life-threatening hazard without warning can count as reckless endangerment under New South Wales law, and given the severity of the crime, it can result in 2 years in prison. But while Dory was careless and chaotic around jellyfish, it was Marlin who suggested it, so it's on him and not Dory. Once they reached Sydney Harbor, Dory wasn't exactly diplomatic about getting directions. She threatens to feed a crab to seagulls unless the crab gives her information, and roughs up several other sea creatures along the way to get answers. That's intimidation and coercion. It can result in up to 5 years in prison. And since Dory threatened to feed the crab to seagulls, that's also a death threat. And under New South Wales law, it can result to up to 10 years in prison. Dory running count, 5 years plus 10 years in prison. Finding Dory is set in California, modeled on the real Monterey Bay Aquarium. Dory escapes from the Marine Life Institute and leads Marlin and Nemo through restricted pipe systems into other exhibits. Under California's penal code, trespassing onto restricted property is a misdemeanor worth up to 6 months. Dory running count, 5 years plus 10 years plus 6 months in prison. Later, Hank the Septipus steals the delivery truck to transport them all to the bay, with Dory riding along and directing him. Being present for and benefiting from a vehicle theft makes her an accessory. The truck causes several traffic accidents on the Pacific Coast Highway, with significant property damage to other cars and a food truck. As a passenger encouraging the getaway, Dory also shares liability for reckless driving. Accessory to Grand Theft Auto and to reckless driving is enough for 1 more year in prison for Dory. Dory final count, 16 years and 6 months in prison. Now, let's go to the Cusconian Empire, where an emperor is not only a leader of his people, but also a god. Krunk is criticized by even his own shoulder angel and devil, mocked by the squirrel he tries to befriend, and often has to clean up messes made by Yzma. Like the time he had to sneak into the muddy jungle to steal back the unconscious Emperor Cusco from Pacha's cart. So Krunk can't catch a break, even while being built like Incan Johnny Bravo. But what about his crimes? He assists Yzma in poisoning Cusco, intending to kill him, but the potion instead turns him into a llama. The Emperor's new groove is set in a fictional kingdom that resembles the Incan Empire, so reusing the laws of Tehuantitziu, Incan law, which treats any offense against the Sapa Inca, the Emperor, as the worst possible crime. Attempted regicide against a divine emperor in Incan society was treated as the ultimate act of treason, punishable by immediate execution, often by being clubbed to death. Krunk running count, execution by being clubbed to death. Later, Krunk transported the Emperor against his will while planning his death. That's kidnapping, and given the Emperor's semi-divine status in Incan society, unlawfully seizing him was treated as an act against the state itself, worthy of extending the punishment to Krunk's entire household under traditional Incan collective guilt practices. Eventually, Krunk has a change of heart after his shoulder angel and devil argue. Instead of finishing the job, he drops the Emperor onto Pacha's cart. So, would he be pardoned? Doubtful, because the Incas had no chill when it came to crimes against their emperor. They often amputated hands of those who committed theft and gouged the eyes out for lesser offenses against the state. Krunk final count, execution for attempted regicide, plus collective punishment for his family. And finally, let's examine the crimes of one dumb Polynesian chicken. Hey Hey is the least competent creature in the Disney canon. A rooster so profoundly dim that his own village considers him a strong candidate for dinner rather than a pet. Hey Hey is treated by the villagers of Montanui as barely worth keeping around, and Maui doesn't hide his opinion either. He refers to Hey Hey as boat snack and drumstick, and at one point actually starts feeding him grain to fatten him up for eating. Hey Hey survives this by mostly being too stupid to realize what's happening, and sometimes too stupid to even eat the food he's given. When he first realizes he's stowed away on Moana's canoe and is surrounded by open ocean, he panics and screams until Moana has to calm him down and secure him so he doesn't hurt himself. Moana is set in ancient Polynesia, a culture without a modern court system, but one governed by tapu, a strict code of sacred restrictions found across Polynesian societies that dictated who could touch, enter, or possess certain sacred people, places, and objects. Violating tapu wasn't just frowned upon. Depending on the severity, it could result in fines, banishment, or in the most serious cases historically, death. This is a culture where accidentally sitting in the wrong spot could ruin your whole week. So let's see how Hey Hey fares. Hey Hey wanders into a hidden cavern containing the ancestral voyaging canoes of Moana's lineage, vessels tied directly to her ancestors and her people's identity as wayfinders, and boards one uninvited, becoming an accidental stowaway. Boarding a sacred ancestral vessel without permission would fall squarely under a tapu violation, given how central these canoes are to the spiritual and cultural life of Moana's people. This crime would be enough for his banishment. Hey Hey running count, banishment. His second and far graver offense happens during the Kokomora's attack on the canoe, when Hey Hey accidentally swallows the heart of Te Fiti, the divine relic containing the very power of creation, entrusted to Moana by her grandmother and the ocean itself. Not only does he end up in unlawful possession of a sacred object belonging to a goddess-like mother island, his kidnapping by the Kokomora immediately afterward puts the heart itself at risk of falling into the wrong hands entirely. History has actual stories on how badly this kind of thing can go. Captain Cook's fatal clash with Hawaiian Islanders in 1779 arose in part from tensions tied to sacred customs, after one of his crew's smaller boats was taken amid a dispute widely linked to kapu violations. Endangering the single most sacred object in Moana's entire world would be treated as the single gravest tapu breach imaginable. It's not just royal disrespect, but the disrespect to a literal goddess. Hey, final count, banishment plus clubbed to death. And that was our trial of the day. Which one of these goofy characters deserved their punishment, and who was supposed to have a better ending? If you liked this video, check out this one.